It's one of the earliest lessons in ministry I ever received. I was quite young, an Episcopalian, obviously, still in my early 20s. I wasn't even yet ordained. I was a seminarian, home for a bit from England. And as they allow in that tradition, I preached that Sunday. And I preached, of course, by my own, 23-year-old estimation, great, with power and passion. But I upset a few people. To be honest, I can't even remember what I said, but I upset a few people, in particular this one woman. So upset was she that she made her way back to the office of a small little church, not like St. Rita at all, while the senior warden, who, if you know anything about Episcopal churches, senior wardens, that's like the top layman, he's sitting there with another person counting the offering. And this woman's just going on about my preaching, about how she didn't like it, about how I was wrong, and so on and so forth. And the fact of the matter is, she was right. She was right. I don't know if you've ever been this way. Maybe I'm the only person who's ever been like this at the age of 23, cocksure and so right and knowledgeable about everything, Maybe I'm the only 23-year-old who's ever been like that. She was right. Even if what I said was right, it was obnoxious. Happens, But she said this. She said, I give a lot of money to this church. I give a lot of money to this church. At which point, the senior warden, who's gone to the Lord now, is a good man, he was counting the money, fished her check out of the plate, looked at it, tore it up into 4 pieces, handed it back to her. She was so mad, so upset. She just walked out. I, thank goodness, wasn't there. I got all this information secondhand when the senior warden told me about it. And what's interesting that he told me about this, told me this story, relayed it to me with such a tone and with such a face. I knew he wasn't very pleased with me either. It's one of the earliest lessons in ministry I've ever learned. And that is, we were both wrong. We were both wrong. And sometimes in life, sometimes in ministry, sometimes in church, that's the truth. Sometimes we're both wrong. I was thinking about that lesson. I think about it a lot, actually. I think about that lesson this week, particularly thinking about this remarkable story about this widow and her offering. It's an interesting story when read closely. Jesus, as you probably know, it's in the final days of his earthly ministry. He is soon to be crucified, dead and buried and risen. And there he is in Jerusalem, getting into it with the Sadducees and the scribes about all sorts of things, resurrection from the dead, taxes to Caesar, so on and so forth, this good sort of rabbinic, feast of argumentation. Jesus points to the scribes there. Some of them are good, some of them are full of themselves. He points to the ones that are full of themselves, arrogant, responsible for corruption, for the weakness and wickedness of the system, to use that anachronistic language. And then he talks about this woman, this widow. He's sitting across from the treasury. English translations say really what he's sitting across from are collection boxes. Boxes really isn't the way to describe it. They're more like upside down trumpets, supposedly, and if you were to dump your offering into that trumpet, it'd make a lot of noise. So the bigger the offering, the bigger the sound, and you walk away strutting your stuff because everybody knows that you gave a lot of money. This woman, though, as it says, she only gave 2 coins. 2 coins. And so if you gave a lot of money, it'd make a lot of noise, and everybody'd see it and think, goodness gracious me, look at this person. But the same is true for the poor one, if you just hear a little clink, 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 It's embarrassing. It's humiliating. Yet Jesus points to her, after he's just got done talking about the arrogance of the scribes. Jesus points to her and says she's given more than the rest because she's given all. Now, what's interesting about this passage, I've always thought, is the way in which it's normally read and the way in which it can be read. The way in which it's normally read is, an act of praise for this woman because she gave everything, she gave sacrificially, whereas the wealthy person, just gave a little bit of discretionary income. It's not fair to compare the two, But Jesus doesn't exactly explicitly praise her. He just says she gave everything. That is, you can read it in 2 ways. You can read it as praise for this woman, for giving all that she had. You could also read it as criticism of a system that would take everything she had. 2 ways you can look at that passage. Jesus could be simply pointing out, look at that. Now, I've sat with this passage for a long time. I've thought about it, and to be honest, I think the way to read it is to read it both ways. To read it both ways. Clearly, things were corrupt, things were wicked. That wasn't unusual in the history of the Jewish people. Look at the prophets. Things were always going south. Things were corrupt, things were wicked. And you think Jesus today, we would tell that woman to refuse, resist, don't give your money to that treasury. But Jesus doesn't do that. He simply points to her as an example of faith, great faith. Why? Well, this is the same Jesus who talked about renouncing the self, who talked about giving up possessions, who talked about taking up one's cross. This is the Jesus who preached a gospel not just of selflessness, but of self-renunciation. I'm using the exact language of the Gospels. I'm not making it nice and smooth for you. And she shows what it looks like. She shows us what it looks like, even when things are broken, wicked, weak, corrupt, not going in the right direction. Even then. Circumstances were corrupt, were evil, but still she continued to live faithfully. Still she continued to live out, practice the virtues of Jesus, even though the circumstances were wrong, everything was broken. Still she was faithful. And that's the point. That's the point. If you wait for all the circumstances to be in order before you finally live the Catholic life or live the Christian life, if you wait for everything to fix itself again, to get back to normal, to live the way Jesus wants you to live, it ain't never gonna happen. You're never gonna have that opportunity. She lived in a totally corrupt environment, yet she made her offering, her sacrificial offering. That's the point. She continued to do what she needed to do. I think that's what I need to learn, what we need to learn again, maybe. Things are all jacked up, goodness gracious. But if you use all those jacked up things as excuses for not living out your Catholic life, come on, man. It's ridiculous. The obvious topic, one of the topics relevant to this passage is the topic of money. I've talked about it before, what I call the great tradition. And that is the tradition which has its roots in the desert, in Deuteronomy, living sacrificially and in solidarity with the people of God. There shall be no poor among you. It's relived within the Christian church. If you read Acts of the Apostles, it's there. Jesus talked about dispossession. Paul talked about giving according to your means and even beyond that to help the brethren, the adelphoi, the brothers and sisters in need. It's all there. It's all there. And it's the great tradition, to be honest, which helped build civilization. It built all those wonderful churches you see when you go take a vacation in Europe. The whole reason those things exist is because people took that message from the gospel to heart and they understood. They didn't mess around. They understood what that means. Build the kingdom. Take care of the poor. They understood that was number one. Not number three, not number four in your priorities. It is the tradition which gave you the philanthropic instinct, whether you know it or not. It's this beautiful tradition. But again, there are a lot of excuses that are easy and very close by. I come across them time to time. People will share them with me, sometimes they're not ashamed to share them with me, and I totally get them too. I mean, they make perfect sense. I'm not given to a church that's, just point, Why would I give to this, that, or the other thing? I totally get it, as I said. But the thing is, those excuses aren't in the Bible. Those excuses are not part of the tradition. Those excuses weren't in the heart of that widow. And really all I can say is, good luck with that. If that's your view, if that's your attitude, I totally get it on one hand. But having read the Bible, knowing the tradition, I say this with all due respect, all I can tell you is good luck with that. Basil the Great, preaching to his people a long, long time ago, trying to get them to help others. He talked about Matthew 25 and the judgment, the goats and the sheep and stuff like that. And Basil said, I'm telling you this story, and please do not fool yourself. It is not a nursery rhyme. It's what will come to pass. Again, I'm not asking for your money, at least not this Sunday. I'm just telling you that there's going to be all sorts of reasons, good reasons, even reasons that make all sorts of sense, not to be faithful in this area of your life, which if you are a Christian, you must be. There's going to be all sorts of reasons to not be faithful there, and they're never good. They're never biblical, they just aren't. I'm sorry, don't shoot the messenger. If you've ever been to a Catholic funeral, you should go one before it's yours. The end of a Catholic funeral, often we have the In Paradisum, right? Beautiful. We sing it in Latin mostly, but you can have it in English if you want. And into paradise, may the angels lead you, may the martyrs welcome you, may Lazarus, who once was so poor, welcome you. We sing. It's the last thing we sing for you before you go on. May Lazarus, who was once so poor, welcome you into Jerusalem. Why do we sing that? Why do we talk about Lazarus there? Because the assumption is that you will have lived a life in such a way that the Lazaruses of this universe will want to greet you. The assumption is that you'll live your life in such a way that Lazarus wants to meet you. And the question is, when we sing the In Paradisum over your body, will it be a lie? Or will it be the truth? Whew. Good luck with that. That's tough. Doing right, doing the right thing, even when you've got really good excuses not to. That's the widow's lesson. It's not just about money, of course. It's about everything. About going to Mass. Goodness gracious, that's the big thing. I was in a restaurant the other day, and I bumped into a parishioner. I hadn't seen that parishioner in a good long time. I hope they're not here. If so, I'm talking. And they said, "Hey, is the choir back?" I said, "Yeah, for like a year." It was deliciously awkward. We used to top out about 600 people at the 10:45 Mass. We're about 50% now, maybe a little over 50%. That's good, go in the right direction. But you're telling me there are 300 people scared to death of COVID who aren't here because of that? Seriously? All those young families I see on the Y fields, I'm there, Let's talk about Nothing but awkward conversations. Where are they? Where are they? I remember like 6 months ago, I was talking to a dad on the field. And it's just, well, we're being really careful. You are? There will always be excuses. And they're good excuses. I'm mad at this bishop. I'm mad at this priest. I hate this rule, whatever. Good luck, there will always be something. But can you be like her? That wonderful, wonderful widow. Can out of all this madness and all this nonsense, can you be the sort of person that Jesus points out and says, look at her. Look at her. The faithful act like that widow. And so let's try and act like her. Please stand.